Good morning, everyone. This is Dan O'Sullivan with your Bucks Island Area Fishing Report for Saturday, September the 20th. Hey, we got Tom, Lee, and Gentry joining us. Tracy's filling in some information as he's on a business trip that I get to relay to you. But don't forget, folks, today is our Bucks Island Demo Palooza, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Southside Landing right here in Southside, Alabama. Come take a ride in our Bentley pontoons, our Skeeter, Falcon, Bass Cat, and Icon bass boats. We'll have some snacks provided, and we got some special Demo Palooza deal offerings for you. We'll be right back with what the guys have to say. Hey, while we're running our Demo Palooza on Neely Henry Lake today, Lee Pitts is going to be running his business, Lee Pitts Guide Service, Lee Pitts Outdoors. He's going to be taking some people fishing on Weiss Lake and or Neely Henry today. Lee, let's start at Neely Henry since we're going to be on there sharing some time on the water today. What's going on Neely Henry?
I think everybody's going to have a good time out there. We've had some heat this week, so the water temperature is in the 80s, 80, 81, right there at it. So it needs to cool down some, but the fish are still biting a little bit. It's one of those things, if you get out there early, you can get a topwater bite. You've had to slow down a little bit with a buzz bait and also downsize it some. But, throwing around these edges of the grass, some of the long tapered points, some of these fish are staging up on that to chase shad. So you can throw a little popar or something like go old school with a Sammy or something like that. Something a little smaller. They really haven't wanted to get on that big super spook, some of the bigger baits. I've had to downsize a little bit this week. And then once the sun gets up, they're still holding tight on those docks. I think they can just get in there, get in that shade, get out of that sunlight, and not have to really chase anything. Just wait for the bait and wait for something to come to them. So this week at Neely, I would really, once that sun got up, I would try to find some of these docks in that 3, 4, 5 foot of water and just kind of slow down.
I took a break yesterday or the other day just to kind of have a sandwich by the water for lunch while I was out running errands. And I was right there at Southside Landing, and I started seeing those bait clouds out there. And then, man, right inside the grass line, man, they just erupted. I mean, there were like 3 or 4 fish that were good quality, boom, blowing up on shad. So I know that's a bite for sure. All right. I know the crappie bite hasn't quite started yet. Little bit just getting going anywhere, kind of dock shooting and that stuff. But tell me what's happening at Weiss Lake.
All this week I've been at Neely, but the guys that I've talked to that have fished Weiss, it's been tough up here. Catching small fish in the bass, part of it, catching some short fish, throwing a little trap on some of these gravel bars, a small crankbait. Not much of a topwater bait we've had here this week, and I don't know what it is. The water temperature at Weiss and Neely is about the same, but it's just been a little flat here. I know some guys are catching a little mixture of some smaller spots and some white bass together. So that tells me they're trying to school up a little bit. One of the things that's going on here, the crappie bite is starting to pick up some. Really getting out there and downsizing with that Bobby Garland itty bit. That's been one of my go-tos. I'm really just drop shotting it around some of that deeper cover. Starting to get on some of the deeper docks too, and my favorite there, the Miniminder and the Slab Slayer. Always going to be shooting that with something slow, but it's just we're right there on the edge. It's coming. We just had a little heat wave come in here that's kind of held everything, but these bigger fish, they're starting to move out of some of those deeper haunts that they've been in all summer, and they're ready to do it. They're ready to start feeding up. Like you said, the bait balls are really wadding up. Seeing a lot of activity in the mouths of some of these pockets, some of the bigger bays with the fish on top in the morning. So that's something to keep an eye on too if you just want to run and gun and look for some fish busting.
Lee, as always, brother, we appreciate everything, and we'll talk to you again next week, my friend. Hey, we're up here at Neely Henry with our Demo Palooza this weekend on Saturday, but Gentry Gordy's checking in with Lake Martin and with Jordan Lake. Gentry, you start where you want to pick today.
We'll start at Jordan this week, Dano. It seems to be a little bit better. I talked to some people and it's still tough, but it's starting to turn a little bit. It's cooler at night, but then it's warming up during the day, so it's kind of hitting a just a lag point. But the bait balls are, especially if they're pulling water in the morning and the afternoons, like going into the new lake and stuff right there. There's some guys catching some fish out there. They're throwing jerk baits and Alabama rigs and top water baits, but you know, the, like we've talked about before, the top water baits just you got to have it ready. Um, but some of them are throwing those Alabama rigs with a little bit smaller baits on them, is what they told me, and
Okay.
getting some bites doing that with them spotted bass. Um, Other than that, they said the grass bite. You can punch up a decent fish every now and then. Um, but the middle of the day is kind of the lull. You got to find some better docks with some trash around it.
Yeah, and that Alabama rig, sometimes you might be able to go small baits because to match the hatch, but sometimes you might need to throw a little bit bigger one on there to make a little bit more of an impression and make the big fish eat. Okay, Lake Martin. I know the crappie bite is just kind of starting to develop all throughout the area, but is the night bite still key? Can you get them during the daytime at all?
No, night bite's still key up there. We've had no rain. They're dropping the water. It's crystal clear. And when it's Martin's always clear, but when you don't have rain for a month, then it really makes it tough. I've seen some crappy boats out there, but I'm assuming they're over probably some deeper trash piles at the mouth of some of those pockets. Um, I hadn't talked to anybody about it though, just what I've seen. The night bite, yeah, it's still better. But if you go up there during the day, it's early morning, seawalls, with top water plugs, and even throwing a Cinco up there. A lot of times if they're not active, and I'll throw a Cinco up on some of them deeper seawalls, floating worm wacky rig. Sorry, and you can get some good bites doing that. But middle of the day, man, it gets real tough. You got to start looking for them bait balls or go out deep.
Yeah, maybe even check some of your brush piles and maybe deeper dock pilings, but that's probably about what you're going to find with finesse baits. Gentry, as always, brother, we appreciate everything. You get that John Deere rolling again. I know you're out there working, growing your business. We'll talk to you again next week, my friend. Hey, we're spending some time on Neely Henry. Today we're talking Demopalooza at Southside Landing from 10 to 2. But right now what we're going to do is we're going to check in with Tom Ott, who's going to spend all the time telling us about Lake Guntersville. Tom, things got to be okay up there at Guntersville. I know good fish are being caught. They're kind of spread all over the place, right?
Absolutely, Dano. It's like we talked last week a little bit. It's time of the year, we're starting to get those fish really transitioning. And, the weather's had some to do with it, the length of day, all that. Everybody knows that. But the fish are really starting to move out. There's groups of threadfin, there's groups of gizzard shad, just about everywhere you go, especially get on the flats. There's just large schools of, bait fish out there. And that's where the bass are. So, as scattered as the bait fish are, so are the bass. But there's a lot of good fish to be caught out there, and a lot of fish are getting caught. I still contend that right now one of the better baits, if not a small swim bait, is definitely some kind of vibrating jig, something. Even some modifications. I've done a few things with swim baits and some jigs, so. Those are really the producers right now. Even some square bills are still producing a lot of good fish, especially when you get around some of those larger groups. But it just seems like there's schools everywhere, and you just kind of got to move until you can find the right size, or at least until you can fool a few of them and pick them off. I mean, they're definitely hanging around with that bait, and it makes it a little bit more difficult, especially during the bright day, the bright days, the bright time of the day. It makes it a little more difficult to fool those fish and to bite, and as opposed to late in the afternoon or early morning.
Yeah, and I know that the fish are probably migrating some. I know the bait is up on the surface. I was there for that Icon tournament, drove by the lake again. There's a lot of grass showing up. There is a frog bite. But are you seeing activity from other species with that schooling going on, with the bait fish out there? Are you starting to see striper going? Are you starting to see maybe some brim moving around? What's happening?
Well, definitely the brim. I mean, anywhere that you get around a grass edge, you're going to see brim. I mean, they're just tons of brim. So the bass are definitely keying on that. I still contend that the shad is their favorite bait. over crawdads or anything like that this time of year, especially. So, as far as the stripe, they're everywhere. Catfish, big catfish are moved in with these bass. It's nothing to catch a big catfish. I had a 30-pound catfish last weekend. So, I mean, it's just, so yes, you're definitely going to get some mix and match in there. We've seen some drum out there as well. They're always kind of running around, again, if you see bait fish, there's going to be another predatory type fish around. So that's, that's kind of the take on it. I mean, the crappie are starting to move around a little bit more as well. Again, following that bait, and it's just going to get better and better from here, I think, especially the cooler the water gets.
Well, brother, we appreciate everything. Thanks for the time, and we'll talk to you again next week, my friend. Hey, we're going to be spending some time on Neely Henry this week at Southside Landing with our Demo Palooza. If you guys are looking for a new boat, come see us. But right now, what we're going to be doing, we're going to be talking about Tracy Robinson's report from Logan Martin and Lake. Tracy's actually on a business trip this week and can't spend the time to be able to break free from his meetings, but he did send us the information of what's happening at Logan Martin and Lake. Here's what Tracy's reporting. Logan Martin, those cooler night temperatures are starting to increase the bait fish activity, the schooling activity on the surface. There's a lot of bait starting to enter the mouths of the creeks. The fish are starting to break on the surface, getting a little bit easier to catch on topwater baits. They're kind of 1.5 to 2 pounders, not really seeing a whole bunch of big ones, but there is a schooling activity, so have a topwater bait ready, probably something small, pop-ar, maybe one of those evergreen shower blows, the small ones. That might work. Chatterbaits and jigs on docks are catching a few largemouth, he reports, but it's kind of slow. You're going to get 1 or 2 here or there. And then the topwater on seawalls is going to be there early in the morning. You might be able to catch a few with those fish starting to get up against there with the schooling activity. And then the crappie bite. Those guys are starting to drag their jigs in the creek channels, and they are catching a few. Lake. Grass is still going to be decent. There is still grass growing down there. The water level is a little bit more stable. A buzz bait and a super spook kind of around the morning, some sort of a walking bait is going to be good. But the summer has kind of pushed the fish. We've got this warming trend. It's kind of pushed the fish back into the grass, and those thicker grass clumps are holding some of the largemouth. Punching all the way up to a 1 ounce weight with your favorite creature bait. That's going to get you a few bites, but it's going to be spotty. Find the tighter clumps with some sparse stuff around it, and those fish are probably going to be around that kind of stuff. Schooling fish around the lower end of the lake, Paint Creek, he reports, is going to be some activity. Have your topwater baits ready. And then, of course, you can always forward-facing sonar on some of that stuff with a jig head and a minnow. But don't leave the topwater bait alone there. Crappie bite, starting to see, not really sure about how much they're catching, but we are starting to see a few out there. But the crappie bite is beginning to warm up a little bit as this shorter days happen. Those crappie are starting to move a little bit. But that's Tracy's report from Logan Martin and Lake. We hope he gets back with us next week. We know it's a busy time of the year for him with work travel, but we appreciate everything that he does to contribute to these fishing reports. And we appreciate you. You're the best part of Bucks Island. Hope to see you at Demo Palooza, Southside Landing this week, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Saturday. Well, that wraps up our Bucks Island area fishing report for Saturday, September the 20th. Thanks to the guys for everything that they do to help us put fish over the gunnel of our boat or on our stringers. Don't forget, folks, we are here to help you. You are family to us. You're the favorite part of Bucks Island are our customers because you are family and you are friends. Thanks for spending the time with us this week, and we'll talk to you again next one.